Welcome in, everybody. RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted here, John here to talk you through a actual happy RFK Refugees Podcast for the first time in what feels like a while, at least on the men's side. Again, Spirit, y'all been crushing it. Y'all been doing great, but you guys have been on vacation, and we just had the U.S. Women's National Team. For joining us and not watching the U.S. Women's National Team or have us on a dual screen, welcome. As it looks like they're about, oh no. Sorry, this is going to be a faux live stream as we kind of watch the U.S. Women's National Team. I've got it on my TV above me. So if you listen to the podcast version, you'll probably that. But John, how you doing, my friend? How was your weekend?
Pretty good. I went outside and played baseball in 110-degree weather, which I don't recommend you do, particularly once you get over the age of like 30. I think it's probably a little not recommended. But, I did it, and I survived, I guess. And then I got to watch a little bit of soccer this weekend, but yeah, I guess it was all right. How about yourself? It's been hot. I'm really just tired of the humidity. It's awful.
It has been hot. I have been availing myself of the pool area around my apartment building, which has been lovely to use that. And I've also been watching soccer, of course, because that's what we do. Watched a little bit of your European championships, had to get some stuff done around the house, and of course watched the lovely Copa America final. Let's touch on that. Let's touch on that a little bit. I feel like that's been the talk of the world. I don't know, like if we're not going to break down the game or anything. Congratulations to Argentina. Congratulations to Spain. Condolences to England and Colombia. But let's talk about like just the nature of these international tournaments and the broadcast and kind of everything surrounding them. Obviously, like, European championships were normal. They were like a normal summer tournament. Copa America was wild. Broadcast was awful. Like, I don't even know like where to begin. Let's start. I'm going to start with Fox. Can somebody please, for the love of God, like, I don't know, take like blackmail a FIFA, who's ever in charge of that at FIFA or something, but please, can we get Fox out of these rights? Because my goodness, the coverage is just bad. It's awful. I don't think I need to tell people Lexi Lawless is bad. Carly Lloyd is bad.
I think it's very funny to put those two together. I feel like that is like the most thumb in the eye of Twitter people like that's ever existed in the universe.
Thumb in the eye of a lot of other people as well, but just like I used to, we used to like Alexa. So yeah, I used to like him because he defended MLS, American soccer at one point, and then he went in a totally other direction that I won't really get into many details here, but we all know what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, it's just, and now like his stuff is just, he's like looking, I feel like, for sound bites in like every single one of his comments. It's just so bad. And the fact that they just like they had the studio in LA rather than, actually investing money, hiring other people, putting a studio. Maybe it would have been cool to have a studio at the Copa America final, to have a studio at the European final. Like ESPN used to do this stuff.
Maybe not at the Copa America final based on the way it went. Maybe that was probably a smart idea.
Maybe that was a smart idea. But the like, you remember you used to watch like when ESPN had the rights, they had a studio on location. Like they did that consistently, and their coverage
even for regular season MLS games, they used to do that.
Yes, I will thumb the opening like theme they do is just so good. It just gets you like excited, and Fox just does none of that. So I don't know. I hope things change. I don't know if you have any thoughts on coverage, any thoughts on the games, but
I don't have any real thoughts on the coverage. Don't care too much about that. I do think that all the memes were very good about like the difference between the Euros and Copa as far as the play on the field, and just how Copa was a street fight the entire time. And
both on the field and negative. Off the field apparently as well too. So
for sure. I mean, I think I've had non-soccer normies come up to me and talk about the Copa America thing. So it broke containment. The rest of the world saw people trying to sneak in through the HVAC and saw the guy who brought his dog into the carrier and the dog ran away. That was my favorite one. That was like the least bad. All of the rest of the footage was like really, really horrible. All the journalists that were there covering it were just sort of like their minds were blown at how awful it was and how security seemed to not really care at all about what was going on for the people that were stuck there. I can't imagine being one of the people outside who didn't get to go in, who had a ticket, and they wouldn't let you in because of capacity. I feel like I would have turned into the Joker immediately. I don't know what. There were people, they interviewed people that spent like $15,000 on flights, tickets, and hotels, and they were just like, guess I don't get to go in because everyone jumped the line.
It's wild, and it's a failure. They're going to be at every single sporting event, Super Bowl, NCAA tournament, any sort of big sporting event. There are going to be people that are going to try to get in without tickets. It happens in soccer, especially with the uniqueness of this tournament. This is probably for some maybe the only time they'll get an opportunity to see these teams play.
Yep.
It's understandable. I think what ultimately gets me is, this is something that should have been prepared for. Both now you got everybody. You've got Hard Rock, you've got CONMEBOL, you've got CONCACAF. Everybody's kind of trading as to who's responsible for it. I think that there are some logistical failures that happened. I find it hilarious that I'm pretty sure CONMEBOL was maybe presented a plan where they were like, here's what we need to do. We feel like to properly secure it, or, here, adopt this plan for FIFA. It'll cost you X amount of money. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that because we want to make an extra, $2 million. And then they're going to take all that money and it's going to go right back into hiring lawyers. There's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be a class action lawsuit for people who spent that money on tickets. It's going to be wild, I think.
I'm glad that it has nothing to do with DC United for once.
Yes.
that makes me happy.
That does make me happy. But let's get into it. Speaking of DC United, let's get into it. DC United 2-1 victors over Nashville SC. Their first win in 2.5 months, I think, at this point.
Years? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
who knows?
It's been bad so far. But it feels like we'll get into some other news. We'll get into some signings that are supposedly going to happen. I don't think some signings became official that I don't think we really dived into too much. I think maybe we'll get into a little bit of that.
Right.
There maybe is some light at the end of the tunnel, along with some sad goodbyes, which we'll get into that in a minute. But let's talk about the game. Coming into this game, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I did kind of have a thought where I'm like, the vibes are so bad, but I feel like this is a game. You got some players coming back. They had an actual bench. They had a week off.
A full bench.
Yes, a full bench. They had a week off, and they were able to actually devote, not to be bouncing between games. Maybe there was kind of a reset. Christian Benteke took the team out to dinner. There apparently was a team dinner, so maybe that might have been hey, let's get some happy, good vibes.
Right. It's like a good line of demarcation of the season. Before the dinner, after dinner. After the dinner, we're 1-0 with 3 points. This is a new. We're starting fresh.
But I think the game opened up, and DC gives up the early goal. I think we'll get into some hopeful defensive improvements that might come in this window. But overall, they came out of this game, and I was like, this is the team we saw early on in the season. This is a team that's pressing, winning the ball. I think having Click back there, even though can I point a specific moment he made in the game? Nothing really comes to mind specifically, but I think it was sort of a team effort in that press, and him sort of being an extra player to kind of, avail himself of that press and to do that press. I think, and help out in that press, I think made that game a lot easier. And I think he was a player that was sorely missed in this game. Give me some of your thoughts, I guess, first half. Starting the game, just happy to have a full complement. I think that's really important. I think having Alex Bono back in the net. I think, we talked about what was that all about? What was this run of Tyler Miller all of a sudden all about? Why did we bring back Luis Samudio? What's going on? I feel like there's a likelihood that Tyler Miller is moved in this window inside of the league. I think they know that they have two could be starting goalkeepers in play, and he's on a decent salary. There's an opportunity to potentially move him within the roster. They wanted to give him some game time, prove he was healthy. That's a complete conjecture. There's no rumors to that effect. I just and also it coincided with a very deep bad run of the team, and Troy may have just wanted to shake it up. That's entirely possible. But I think that's what he's talked about. To be fair, he said he wanted to kind of shake it up.
Then why bring back Samudio and have the third have Corey? What's his face? The third keeper that's been around.
Because Zamudio has been very much locked on that bench. He has not played at all for Colorado.
So do you think they'll find him another loan in the summer window?
I don't know. I think they're looking at their I think maybe they're looking potentially at the Celtic game. I think bringing him back to run him out in that game. He's not getting minutes. He's not getting time in Colorado. I think if he was starting week in and week out for Colorado, he would not be here. Truthfully, I think they said he's not getting minutes. We've got this game against Celtic. Here's an opportunity to see, if we feel like there's anything there. I could very well see if he plays against Celtic and he does poorly or he doesn't really show anything, maybe this team maybe he gets a Leagues Cup match. Who knows? I think you could see them potentially start to move on from him. I don't know where it leaves the team. The goalkeeper core is I don't know where you go with the goalkeeper course. Do you stick with Bono? Do you?
It is weird, right? It's not the problem, but it's also not the solution. There's no one here that you would say I'll throw everyone else in the lake. And it's also not really the reason why we've lost matches. It's been the reason we've stayed in some matches. There was a great save by Bono in the second half that kept the game level. Two of them. So they're it's tough to say. They could certainly clean slate and pick a new number one. That would be completely reasonable and understandable. But I do think that it's somewhat duplicative to have both Bono and Miller on this team. I think that you could probably anyway. That's a guess.
Yeah,
that aside,
I think what we've learned is I wouldn't say Miller's been perfect. I think Miller is he's made a couple good saves. He's also had a couple bad moments. The moment against Cincy, I think comes to mind. I think a lot of people thought after that moment, okay, now you just go back to Bono. I think what Troy Lesesne said is, I think the season is careening out of control. I don't want to kill Miller's confidence by benching him. I think I want to give him another shot. And I think he gave him a couple more shots. It clearly wasn't working out. I think now it's now it's, back to Bono. And I think this was a sense of, I want to get a full picture of who he is and whether I think he can be an actual improvement over Miller. And I think the answer comes up as no. I don't know if he has much trade value at all. I don't see the point in trading him if you don't extract that value. If you can get someone to take a salary, maybe, and you can fill that with somebody, maybe. Mm-hmm. But then what happens if Bono gets hurt? What do you do in that scenario? So I don't know. I think this was kind of a, things are bad. Let's see who we have, and let's see if we want to keep him next year. I think the answer to that is going to be no, and I think he will find himself a new team in 2025. And then I think they'll look for possibly a younger potential, a guy with potential in next year. Maybe whether that's Crockford, whether that's Zamudio, whether that's someone else. And then I think they'll look for maybe a third. Maybe somebody out of the academy. I don't know.
The problem is you can't see Zamudio in training, but he seems when he did play in USL, when he did get opportunities, I think won goalkeeper of the month in USL. I think he could certainly hack it as a backup keeper in MLS. I think if you're talking in any given season, a normal backup keeper starts 4 matches a year. A typical goalkeeper injuries are not hyper common. So I'm just curious what the average number of backup keeper games, cup games when those used to exist, Leagues Cup still. I don't know. Anyway, that's not worth a long digression.
Fair enough. We've already probably given it much, but back to the game.
Yep.
Let's talk about the goal.
What do you think about Herrera as one of the 3 center backs, the right side center back?
I don't like it because I feel like this is it mutes a lot of his abilities. Though again, we'll get to the goal that Dahomey scores. Does Herrera take a shot like that? I don't know. Dahomey's a more attack minded player. I think I think this team is preparing with the signings that are coming in. I think the 3-5-2 is sort of a right now out of convenience. I don't think you're going to see this team, and I could be wrong. I think you're going to see this team eventually switch to the future of this team is going to be a 4-2-3-1 with Schnegg, Herrera, left back, right back, 2 center backs, whether that's
pick your 2.
Yeah, whether that's probably McVay and Bartlett once they're healthy. then I think then you shift, and then you're going to have Borisino and Peltola kind of being your defensive destroyers and kind of, ball winning players, and then you have three, take your pick. It's probably going to be right now Stroud, and possibly Click filling that role in that kind of midfield role, and then out left probably Ted Kudipietro at this point with Benteke up top. And that's kind of where I'm thinking with the signings they're making and with everything else they're making. That's kind of where I'm feeling like this team is leaning at this point. So yeah, I don't think Herrera as a center back is going to happen. So
I think that was a situation of emergency and need rather than what's best for him or the club. But it worked out in this particular case. Was Bartlett injured this week?
Bartlett was suspended. He got
suspended on yellow cards.
The
red card. He had the red card.
He had the red card.
How did I forget another red card that this team had? So he's back next week. I think that probably dictates.
Back on Wednesday, tomorrow.
Back this week. We could talk a little bit about the Celtic game later too about what we think is going to happen with that. But like we said, a full roster, a rarity in this case. I think we're not going to go deep, step by step in this game. I think we have to talk about Christian Dahomey. Obviously, he's come in for, I don't know, probably the most criticism other than Gabriel Pirani, at least out of me and probably out of the show. And the funny thing was his first goal was ugly. Like he made a good run. He made a smart late run to put himself in a spot. But that was and Lloyd Sam sort of indicated too. He's like, well, it went in. That's what matters. He won't be mad at it.
Yeah, and before we get into that, I just want to talk. I feel like the game plan. What was very positive about this game for me was, and something that makes me kind of excited as this run goes in. We talked about when Mateke was suspended, and we talked about this team has been so heavily reliant on him. Maybe having a couple games where they get to kind of work some things out. And, they can't rely on crosses, just aimless crosses to Benteke. Maybe they have to pass the ball. Maybe they have to move the ball. Maybe they have to have guys make runs. And, I will say they got some opportunities in this game. Almost their entire opportunities in the first half did not come from Benteke. Their Benteke opportunities. They came from, really Nashville, to their defensive credit, kind of sat in a shell, crowded up the box. It left a lot of space out wide and let a lot of out space for Dahomey. But to DC's credit, they tried to move, they tried to pass. I think there was a probably the best opportunity came from Stroud, who got the ball at the top of the box and hit a shot that forced Joe Willis into a save. And then there was another nice little move from Martin Rodriguez to find Ted Kudipietro. Not the not the best shot from Ted Kudipietro in the world, but they created opportunities and they got chances where they could have, gotten a goal and maybe gotten the tying goal in the first half. And then you still have that aerial presence of Benteke on the tying goal where he wins the header off the corner kick, heads it down. Yeah, it's ugly, but Dahomey does make the run and does put himself in that position where all he has to do is really just put any type of direction on it, and it's probably going to the back of the net. So a goal's a goal.
And then 2 minutes later, he scores the opposite of that goal in that he tried his luck and he just belted it not upper 90, but right into the roof of the net on the near side. Just kind of smashed it. I think that Joe Willis did not expect that shot coming from that angle at that velocity, and he was not prepared for it. But quickly took the lead over a course of 3 minutes early in the second half.
Yeah, and I think that's something to watch in that the reason he has that space is because Nashville backed off. They were like, we're just going to gunk up the middle. We think you guys can only score if Benteke gets open opportunities or is 1v1 with like a defender, and we're just not going to allow that. And DC said, okay, well then we're going to try to pass and move, and we're going to let Benteke play the Jamie Tart dummy role, and we're going to get opportunities. And it was a great effort from Dahomey, but something to watch. Wednesday, I'm going to be very curious to see if that's something we see continue.
Yeah, I think too, they also backed off on that particular play. They backed off because they've watched tape of him and they're like, we're not super concerned about this happening, and rightfully so. So anyway, you got to give it up. You got to give it up when the player that you've been dogging all year has a good game. He had a good game. Congrats to him. Curious to see if he's able to follow it up with more productivity. At least confident. Like clearly, the confidence of the first goal gave him the confidence to take the second. To take the second. So let's see that continue.
I'll be curious. I'll be curious with last thing on Dahomey. I'll be curious to see Schnegg comes in. Obviously, David Schnegg is going to be your starting left back.
Yep.
So that opens him, that potentially pushes him out of the starting lineup, which I'm sure he's not happy about. But I think it also could open up an opportunity for him to, to get another moment in his natural position where he can just be an attacker. And that is where he's been most effective.
It puts Jacob Murrell down one step in the pecking order. Should he get back in there? And I think that's not horrible based on, I don't think that's the worst thing. Wonder what kind of, with absolutely no defensive, responsibilities, what kind of player can Dahomey be? He was a better creator before he got into that wing back spot. He was not prolific scoring the ball, but he was able to create chances in a way that was useful. So, like you said, something to watch. The one stat that cracked me up and made me feel really bad and sort of told a lot about the season and the situation the roster's in. When Pirani came on, Lloyd Sam says, yes, he scored as a substitute a couple weeks ago. That's actually the only goal that DC United has gotten from a substitute all season long. Which, is that true? Was Christian Fletcher a substitute when he scored against Portland?
Yeah, he was. Season? He was. I don't
so then they're wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong.
Okay,
that's not 100% true.
I was like, that. It's surely there aren't a bunch of them, but the fact that I could think of one in 2 seconds tells you that maybe don't trust. Anyway, so disregard that. By the way, Pirani looked not too great to me in the little bit of time he was on the field. I think there was an opportunity where I think Benteke played him in, and he just tripped on his own shoelaces. He's in on goal.
He made a good run. I think he got a shot off. Ultimately, it just wasn't enough to put it on frame. I mean, it was opportunistic. You like to see him make those types of plays. So, I want to give him some credit, but at the end of the day, I just don't think it was, I don't think it was there. I mean, full credit to DC. I feel like defensively in this game, they really, other than, I think there was an opportunity off the post and obviously the goal, which was just, I think a lot of people are kind of ripping on it and talking about how bad, a lot of people wanted to push Peltola to the bench after that. I saw some tweets of that nature, and I'm like, he's not he can play center back as a third center back, but he is not a second center back. And I think he just gets caught in an uncomfortable position. I think Santos also deserves some blame for not picking it up. I think Bono deserves some blame for not coming to meet the ball and try to prevent that opportunity from happening. So I think it's just a bad goal all around for both sides. But at the end of the day, he flubs the shot, by the way. He pulls it wide. I was kind of like, I wanted to pull up the highlight for Pirani, but
wide right.
Right, yes.
He had 0.3 expected goals on that shot, by the way.
Well, better than he's had all day. But no,
yeah.
just want to finish my thought on Peltola.
Yep.
I thought he still brought some things as far as his passing, his range, his ability to kind of play those kind of quick line splitting passes. I saw some of that there. I know I've been a big Peltola backer. I think the goal's unfortunate, but I think otherwise, I think he had a pretty good game out there. And I think DC did well to kind of they really kind of prevented a lot of Nashville from generating many opportunities. Hani Mukhtar was a non-factor, which is shocking.
The stats bear you that out, too. He was 91% of passing, 32 of 35, 4 passes into the final third from center back, which is pretty impressive. 4 out of 5 on his long balls. 7 recoveries, dribble past once. But yeah, aerial duels 2 for 2. So he stood out to me too as feeling pretty confident. He had to make he had made a couple last ditch tackles that were a result of sort of bad positioning that got him in that place, but he's able to recover because I think he's faster than your average MLS center backs and some of the attacking players. So it will be really, he is an interesting case, right? I think that there is really good arguments to see what he brings if they kept in a 3-back system, which you say they're probably not. And I think there's probably some truth to that, and we'll find out here pretty soon, just based on the players they brought in. But he could fit in either one of those. He's got unique skill sets as one of the three in the back, and I think he's. I don't want to say he's less of not a liability. He's not a liability anywhere really necessarily in MLS. I think his upside is higher actually in the back with a 3-back than he is in midfield, just because I think there's some physicality things that he can cover better at center back. But I don't know. I think he's an interesting player because it's very uncertain where he nets out, what Troy thinks his best position is. He's young, so there's an ability to move him around a lot and figure that out, I guess, still, both in this year and the years to come.
Yeah. And I think, we'll get into that, and maybe we want to go ahead and jump into that. I think the signing of Boris, I think, is interesting because I've not watched much of Boris, but I think the recognition has been, I think what they've tried to do is to see if he can be, and, there's been a lot of talk about, when he came in here about how much ground he covers. And I think the idea was, okay, we're going to get him into this scenario and he's going to be I'm trying to think of like someone like a Kyle Beckerman, like a Michael Bradley, like just cover a whole bunch of ground and just be an elite, number 6 in this league. And I think ultimately what they've learned maybe is that, maybe that's not what his skill set is, or that's not what he can do. He can do it, in the, cold, 40, 30 degree weather in Finland, but you put him in the sweltering 90 to 100 degree weather in DC, and maybe that changes a little bit. So
we always said he would change colors, and that has been so.
But it's more to that point. Maybe that's something that he adjusts. It's kind of a shock, I'm sure, when he like goes out on the field and like right now it's 100 something in DC, and he's like, oh my god, I got to play in this. Like, are you kidding me? So be interesting to see maybe how he adjusts next year.
Yeah, I mean, so you're thinking if they did go to 4 in the back and had a 2 shielding defensive midfielders, you think it's Peltola and Eno?
Yes.
Okay.
That is my thought process. I think the Eno signing is interesting. I think it doesn't bode well for Matthias Klick coming back next year. I think it potentially opens up. I think the team could potentially look to theoretically open up a DP slot there for a number 10, or maybe they keep him there, and but I just feel like shifting that formation isn't where he fits. Again, I could be completely wrong. I could see a 3-back line potentially working. With
Schneid can play fullback. They've already sort of said that as opposed to a wingback rather than just fullback. So he can get up and attack if that's the way they want to go with it.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be, this is going to be, I think, interesting times as far as like what the team is thinking about how they're going to do this next year.
He has to settle, right? This would not, I mean, we spent a lot more money and have missed a lot bigger than $2.2 million in a defensive midfielder. So we'll see. There's a lot. They're gonna try it out, and they're gonna try different formations to see if Peltola and he work together well. Matthias Klick going makes a lot of sense if you look at what you still need from this roster and what the DP slot provides you. The struggle will be, for all this team's warts, he has not been one of them, and he is a chance creator, a ball winner. You saw him when he was unable to play. You saw what happened with this team. So when you subtract him and add in another player, it's got to be an immediate difference maker that works really well with all of the players on the team. Versus, so you're building a negative space if you remove Klick and putting somebody in, versus building around him and trying to find other complementary players. So that's just a bigger challenge for McKay, and that's not to say not to do it.
Yeah, and I think with
this team is bad. I mean, this team is in the near, the bottom third of the table. So
yeah,
drastic changes are completely warranted by McKay if he wants to do
it. And they're certainly coming. They're certainly coming, and I think they've gotten a little bit of juice with recent announcements. But
let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about the big one that maybe you think makes the Eno signing possible.
Yeah, let's do it. So Steve Birnbaum announced today, so thankfully we're recording today. Steve Birnbaum saying that basically he is done. He is retiring. Talked a lot. Really, I don't know if you had a chance to
I did
to sort of read some of what's been going on, but and for those of you who haven't read, it sounds like he is like he is in immense pain right now, says he can't like play with his kids because he's in so much pain. And I think he is finally, finally decided that it's time. It's interesting, and maybe you want to read some points. Give me some of before we get into that, I have some thoughts on Steve.
Yeah,
give me some of your thoughts on Steve.
Yeah, just on the state he finds himself in, calls back to Ben Olsen a little bit as far as like inability to do basic things. I think maybe to a lesser degree, Steven Strasburg, who just retired and couldn't hold his kid or couldn't lift his arm up, had to sleep on his side, a whole bunch of crazy stuff due to the problems that he encountered from pitching. I think we have always been worried about Steve, right? For a while now. He has had many, many concussions. He has thrown his body into any challenge he could possibly find, whatever it would take to do his job. I think we could talk more about sort of what his legacy is with the club, but there's one thing you could not ever doubt was that he was tough, and that he would play hurt, and he would do whatever it took to try to stay in the game and try to make the play. So it's been 11 long years. For a long part of that, other than the concussions, he was really healthy. I think the lower body stuff, the knee, really, really took a lot out of him. He said he's got no cartilage left in his knee. It's just bone on bone. He's going to need the article with Goff that you're referring to said that he's going to need a new hip. He's going to need a new knee. That's a daunting. He's only, how old is he? 33? I think he's 33. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's daunting to think about. You got 2 kids, you have a wife, you're 33, and you're going to need new. That's a big surgery. I mean, obviously, but it is a major recovery. So, I think this is the right call for him. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also the right call for the club. And I want to make sure I call that out. I think that we don't know what has been happening. This was not a surprise. It's the response from some of the players and about this happening. It's like, oh, this is kind of hoisted upon you. This was a bit of a surprise. If you listen to the way Troy has talked about Steve this year, there's subtext of like, he is trying. He is doing his best. He just wants to make it back to try. And he said he wanted to give it one more shot, basically, is kind of where it was at. And he wasn't able to practice consecutive days. It's similar to Ben at the end of his career here. It's just like, he's just trying to eke it out, just trying to get through the week as best he can, just to try to get on the field. So that was been the case all year long. But here it is, July 16th, prior to the beginning of the secondary window opening or closing. It's been open since July 1, right?
Yeah, it's open. No, it's open July 18th. It's a couple more days.
So before that even happens, he retires. So that means he's done. He's on the salary cap. The hit for him for half of this year is going to be off the table for DC United. So that is space. He was also a TAM player, I believe, at 800,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is a big benefit for this club. Does that mean that there's more room for more players, or was this the move that allowed them to get Boris Eno in? And the reason why that you think that should be the case is if you read Steve Goff's article about Eno's signing, they thought they couldn't get him in here without being a designated player, but then conversations happened and they were able to get him in. So clearly that says to me very much the point that you made earlier, that these two moves are related.
Yeah. Again, we don't know for sure. I mean, I think maybe there were some conversations. Maybe there was it seemed to read to me also maybe that, his club in Israel was like, hey, no, we want more money. And they were like, no. And DC was like, no, we can't do that for these reasons. And maybe word gets out to Eno, and he's like, no, I want to go. So either you make this move happen or I'm going to be upset. Because I think he wants to, all due respect to the Israeli league, it's not, the highest league in the world. And, again, the team he's playing for is not competing for Champions League. Let's just say that.
And probably not the time that you'd want to be there, all things considered. Probably not the best time to be there. So, I think you can tell by what happens the rest of this window. Either this is what allowed it, or they have $400,000 to play with. So keep that in mind as players come in and out. So so you said we've not gotten a chance to talk about the players who've come in, right? We knew about Schnegg.
Yeah, we kind of talked a little bit. I think I wanted to do some research. That hasn't happened. Sorry.
The future of David Schnegg. Dominic Baji comes in. is our new backup number 9. It's serving the great. There's a long legacy of backup number 9s here. The Eric Sorgas of the world, the Estradas. Is it David Estrada? Who am I thinking of? We also had David Estrada, who the player from
is that Eric Sorga? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about Eric Sorga. There's just Mike Cone Santos. The backup number 9s go back way back. So I think that
Nigel Robertha's the other one you're thinking of.
Nigel Robertha's one. I'm still thinking of other ones. This basically says when Benteke needs a blow, you're actually going to have a proven goal scorer, not someone who just graduated from Georgetown 6 months ago or 12 months ago. So I think that's probably good for this team to be in a situation to do well. Baji is going to get. You're going to about to see him get some major minutes here this month. I think that's what's going to happen. I think Benteke is going to be like Leagues Cup and any friendlies that we have. We're gonna keep you 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the end of the games if we have to, but try to keep you out of the games as much as possible.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know if you can keep a guy like that off the field. I think you will see him. There will be options now where you can sub him off in certain situations, and you can maybe rest him for, instead of playing 90 minutes, he plays, 65, 70 minutes. I don't know with regards to, I will think maybe it might be an interesting thing to watch. Does the team, if the team is being ginger with him, resting him, that maybe sends a message that they're looking to exercise his option and keep him here next year. If they play him full 90 for the rest of the year, that maybe sends a message that, this is the last ride for him here, and then we're going to go elsewhere. So something to watch. Right. Something to watch.
Interesting thing about this Birnbaum announcement is he's going to play against Celtic for a half and then come off and be replaced at halftime and be honored. Very cool. But which tells you this was not an acute new injury that occurred. I remember I'm trying to remember what team he was playing. I was there. I think it might have been Houston. No, it wasn't Houston. It was the game before Houston. He gets jostled and then he comes off. I think it was just like, you tried. You did your best. The knees, you cannot have knee collisions with your knee anymore. So he's going to grit out 45 minutes. He's going to say goodbye. This team, there's going to be hope. There may or may not be some sort of celebration for him at the game. I think there should be. Let's talk about his legacy. I think I wanted to.
That's what I was going to get into next. So let's talk about it. I think it's what's interesting about his legacy. I feel like it is to a certain extent. I don't want to say like checkered, but I feel like, the notion is, and someone brought up this point, the team did not win a trophy while he was here. I guess if you want to count the Capital Cup, maybe
we're not going to count that.
But he came in the year after. He was a product of how bad the 2013 season was for DC when they won that Open Cup. So he was not there for that, the team. So I think that ultimately as DC fans, Bill Hamid has a trophy. He was part of the team in the 2013 Cup.
Bill Hamid only played one game in that tournament. He just played the final. Joe Willis played every other game in that, and he just came in for the final. So just a counterpoint to the narrative there about the difference.
Well, yeah, and I think Steve Birnbaum. I hope as the years goes on, I do hope he gets some sort of other role in this club that might elevate him a little bit amongst the fan base. Because I feel like his playing career, he had some very good moments. I think he was definitely starting 11 or first team. I think he made MLS Best 11. He might have been a finalist for Defender of the Year. I don't know if he's actually won Defender of the Year. But, I think from his accolades, it really never – it's weird because I feel like he should be loved and he should be remembered as a player. He only played for DC United 2014 all the way through sorry, I'm just muting my phone here. Someone is trying to text me. From 2014 all the way through 2022, they had an 8-year career. 2024, 10-year career. Sorry, I can't do math. 10-year career here. Like any other player who has that type of longevity at a club is usually beloved and remembered. And I just feel like something with him is just, I don't know if it'll be 100% that. So I don't know. It's interesting.
So I want to say that it's he's a victim of the time at which he came to this club.
Very true.
I think that really has to be driven home. One center back was never going to elevate this club to trophies. It was never going to happen. It just really wasn't the case. You have a player here who led MLS in aerial duels 2018, 2019, 2022, percentage of aerials 2018, 2022. He was the Christian Benteke of the back line for the prime of his career here. I already talked about sort of his durability or his attempts to be durable. He was similar when they always talk about like how the goalkeepers like Rafael Romo did poorly for DC United because he had Tony Alfaro as a starting left back. Steve Birnbaum has had a pretty messy list of center back partners over the years. Over time, I think that the frustration with the team became a frustration with him. And you know why? Is because he was the familiar face that ran through the lean times, right? So the long-term fans, you got to yell at somebody. You got to take it. First, they took it out on Ben. Then Ben left. Where else are you going to point it? Who else are you going to yell at? Who's the guy that's been here? Bill left. And then it was just Steve and it was just Russell. So, you know, did he win any trophies while he was here? He did not. I think that you can still have a legacy worth honoring despite that, based on the context of what this club was during that time. He was I think oftentimes a good player on a bad team. I think he struggled with the fans sometimes because they may have wanted a more fiery, vocal, rah-rah leader than Steve really presented. But that's about our expectations, and maybe he was a quiet leader. Maybe he was a leader inside the locker room and on the training field. He seems to have the respect of his teammates. If you look at the sort of the stuff pouring in for him, by the way, definitely check out the testimonial video that DC United put on their Instagram. Bobby Boswell, still hilarious, very funny guy. Also, the Ben Olsen, for some reason, I don't know why I didn't expect Ben to show up on that, but like it kind of hit me a little bit. I was like, yeah. He knows, like he's lived that before you, and he kind of made that point. So anyway, I just want to really reiterate that, you know, I think he deserves as much credit as possible. He deserves as much credit as Bill Hamid deserved when he left. Sort of the similar players in similar situations, except for Bill is still playing and winning trophies at the NPSL level as of last weekend. And Steve, which is it's a topic upon itself. But Steve, gave it all, and he is where he is. And I hope that he's able to find some comfort in his personal life and in his physical life so that he can get it on. And I do hope that he stays, with the academy. I think there's a lot he can teach young defenders about how to play. And I just want to make sure that, I get it up. I met him and his family right when he got drafted. I took the bus up to Philly for the draft on a middle of the week, took a day off of work to go up there. Everyone was drinking on the bus. People were drinking at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday or whatever it was. And then we got there and DC United put us up in like a pizza shop at like 11:30 or 12. And he comes in there with his family and his grandma, and we are singing and swinging scarves at him. And he's, he gets it, but the look on his grandma's face, like, what weirdos, what's going on? And then apparently she just always traveled subsequent. I think she passed away in the last couple of years, but she always traveled to games and started to like get it a little more. But I won't forget that. And it was, he's been there for as long as I've been super passionate about the club. So I'll miss him. I hope he has a great retirement.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think there's a lot you said there about the fans, and I think he had the unfortunate nature as well to be matched up against Bill Hamid, who was there during that time. And Bill, we know, is started out at the academy, was pictures of him in the Barra Brava, and I feel like this is a guy who was drafted from California. I think he is no less a DC United player than Bill Hamid. I think he was been incredible. I've always thought he has been better than what a lot of people said he is. The numbers bear it out in a lot of cases.
Said that. We have said that through the years. I think that we're pretty dependable on that.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of things about that. I mean, obviously his best year was when he was paired up with Bobby Boswell. So yeah, it's going to be tough. It's sad to see him go. And now he remains, I think, one of, I guess if you count Jeremy Gray, I think he's one of like three players who played during the RFK days. And Now it's just Russell Knaus who's left, who played sort of that last half season at.
Are you counting Garay as an academy player? Is that how?
I think I'm gonna go with Brendan Cartwright. I think Brendan Cartwright pointed out that Garay is still the longest tenured player at DC United, even longer than Russell Knaus. I think that's what he posted. I was kind of reading quickly. Let me. Yeah, I'm gonna trust Brendan Cartwright with that.
It's safe to do, particularly over my memory. I would certainly trust that over mine.
I feel like Garay was signed. I can't find his Twitter, but I'll give you a second.
There was a question too. We were having a discussion in the Discord today about sort of what should be done with him, basically. Like where do you place him in the pantheon? And like I think this team, as it continues to evolve and, honor its history, but also move to 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever iteration this is of DC United, even if the player is not Marco Echeverri or Eddie Pope, these players still have a role to play both in the academy system, in community relations, in being in the stadium on broadcasts. This team does a very poor job with making sure that that second tier of player, the non Hall of Tradition players, are still around the team. I think that those players are super important to, particularly since this team has gone so long without success, to just black hole this decade plus of time to pretend it didn't happen is a disservice to all the people who have lived it and breathed it for all this time. So I think that you have to, if you're the ownership or you're the marketing staff or whoever, like those guys, like Santino Quaranta, like those players that are like right below that tier, there are long surviving fans that have a real affinity for that sort of middle ground player. And I think that they need to make sure, whether it's in coaching or some other capacity, to keep him around if he wants to be.
Steve Birnbaum, do you think he deserves to be in the Hall of Tradition?
Who's in there now?
Eddie Pope's in there, John Harkes, Jaime Moreno, obviously Ben Olsen's in there, Marco Echeverri. Like, they have not had an inductee, I think, in a long time. Time.
I think so. Hall of Very Good. It's something like the always the discussion in baseball is the Hall of Fame versus the Hall of Very Good. He's a Hall of Very Good guy. I think that it doesn't hurt. Nothing like there's no like downside in it really. Like there's no like, well, you've besmirched this like basically fictional Hall of Tradition. How dare you? How dare you bring the quality down?
And I think the most important thing about the most important thing about fan Hall of Traditions, I will say, is not necessarily it's a way to sort of have people recognize your history. It's a way to and I think you got to look at this era that, again, you talk about the era that he played in. If he is part of an MLS Cup championship team, 100%. Here's another guy in there, and that's Richie Williams. And he was the name that came to mind. He's like, he's a player. I don't think when you hear people talk about DC United and what they meant, Richie was certainly a great player when he played 96 to 2000. And then in 2002, he was part of those teams that won championships. I'm sure I'll have an old head talk about how great he was and how I'm undermanaging him, but he's not a player that you think about when you like look at the list of these names that go down the list. John Harkes, Marco Echeverri, Jeff Agoose, Raul Diaz-Arce, Eddie Pope, Ben Olsen, Jaime. I mean, these are guys that had either longevity careers like Ben Olsen, who played for over a decade.
221 appearances for DC United, and then just to remind you, Steve had 262 appearances for DC United.
Yeah. So in my mind, I think you should. I think you're not going to have too many players. Like Bill Hamid is probably hit the last player, then him, and then maybe there's a small argument for Russell Knaus considering his longevity. I think whether he comes back next year and how he performs, could change that. But I think just having those types of players in your Hall of Tradition, yes, they don't arise. Steve Birnbaum doesn't arise to the level of Eddie Pope or even Jeff Agoose. I mean, those guys won championships. They were part of a special group in that early years that won championships. Steve Birnbaum, I don't feel like should be punished just because of the era that he played in, and the fact that the team couldn't spend money to build around him, and then when they could spend money, did it stupidly and really couldn't build a sort of successful longevity team. By the way, it's really funny how we do not have a keeper in the Hall of Tradition. I just noticed that. We have goalkeeper.
Bill or Raimondo, both of those, you think you probably would be the ones you put in there.
I think for me, longevity is always going to be, I think, the key here. And Raimondo was here,
3 seasons?
Yeah.
4 seasons?
2003, 4, and then I think 5, and then I think he was then traded off. So
he got 2 cups?
What's that?
He got two MLS Cups with DC United?
1 cup.
One?
Just 2004. That's all he got with DC. So, yeah, I mean, I think he deserves it. And I think it's, it's about, I think it's high time that DC start to look to do something like that and to induct a player like that. I think Bill should be first. I think you get him in there and you induct him in. But this team has been very quiet about those types of things. And I think regardless of the success, I think it's important to bring those types of things back and to sort of keep the connection with the fans. And I think that's the most important thing.
They seem to just want to blink and put the lean years of RFK, just forget them, just fold them up and say, that didn't happen. We won a bunch of trophies. And now here we are at Audi Field. But unfortunately for them, there was a long period there where they were not winning things and they were not at Audi Field. And trust me, I know. Yeah. that is my proving ground at DC United. Also, look at this roster. Who's gonna play 11 years with this club?
Yeah.
Nobody.
No one.
Nobody is. It's just not going to happen. If Ted Kudu-Pietro if he blows up, he's going to want to move up and move on. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't blow up, if he just sort of stays where he is, he won't stay here long term because he won't be able. It won't be. That's the thing I was sort of talking about too before. Is there is a. It's just maybe the way MLS is evolving or whatever, but there is this meaty middle of these players that used to last at clubs for 6, 7, 8 years that were good MLS players, but didn't really aspire to go to play in Belgium, a marginally better league or whatever it is for a little bit more money. That just wasn't in the cards. So they just stayed and they became club legends. They're just synonymous with success there. And then that was it. And if you just look at this roster, that player does not exist. And I don't know where they're going to come from. It seems like it's a bygone era thing.
It's a nature of the league too. You talk about, your younger players who, who move up, the idea is that they go to Europe, is that they rise to be that level of player that eventually goes to Europe. And then you talk about those sort of middle of the road players who might, like your Birnbaums, who might aspire to be that. Either it doesn't work out, where they move, or they just never get that offer that comes in, or in, I think in Birnbaum's, in a lot of other cases, those players start to get expensive, and then they start to be tradable assets for teams that are trying to win championships. Perfect example comes to mind, Bobby Boswell, maybe that in my mind could be another name that maybe you want to induct into the Hall of Tradition. But again, he got to a point where he was his age and he was a weight on the cap. The team was bad, and so they traded him because to a team like Atlanta that was looking for a sort of veteran center back. So I think that's also what you kind of run into with a lot of those middle players. They become tradable depending on where your team is. If your team's bad, those players become expensive weights that you try to move to free up roster spots.
I brought up the longest tenured players in MLS. I think it's pretty interesting. Right now, Steve is 7th. He'll be passed, obviously, because these are all players that are active. He'll be quickly passed. Players above him, Andre Blake, obviously drafted the same day as him. So that's someone to think about there. Stephen Fry, 10 years, 7 months. Jonathan Osorio with Toronto, 11 years, 4 months. Andrew Farrell with New England, 11 years, 6 months. Ryan Mira with New York Red Bulls has been there for 12 years.
12 years as a number 2 goalkeeper, by the way.
Yes, that is
wild.
That is super wild. Crazy. And Diego Chara has been with Timbers for 13 years.
Jeez. So those are guys in their clubs. Maybe, sorry, all due respect to Ryan Mira.
Yeah, not going to be on the Hall of whatever they have the Red Bull.
Those are guys that are going to make their teams Hall of Fames. Osorio's been long tenured. I'm sure he's beloved. Diego Chara as well, longtime legend of this club.
38 years old too, by the way.
Yeah, jeez. So I think there certainly is. I think there is certainly those players. I just think you're right. You don't see them as much as you used to. And I think there's certainly good reasons for that. Dax McCarty is like the perfect example of this. A guy who's been like excellent good, a team that can sort of elevate a certain team, but you get to a certain point in it, and the team's like, you're a massive winner on our contract. We're trying to rebuild. Have a nice life. So
I think a lot of it too is the decline of the draft. Like I'm looking at a lot of these players are MLS draftees. I think there's something that I think it's funny that Alejandro Bedoya is 14 with almost 8 years in, and he had a whole ass European career for a while. He played for Randers. He played a bunch of clubs in Europe for his 20s. So it's interesting.
I think that's going to be something else to watch as well. We're going to have this wave of U.S. MNT players that are very talented, that are well known. Eventually, their career potentially could lead them back to MLS. I think there's going to be an avenue where Christian Pulisic comes back. There's going to be an avenue. I'm not saying it's going to happen right now, so Eurosnop's listening. Yeah, we're talking a while. Though Weston McKennie appears to be challenging that, that nature, or challenging that idea that it might be a while. So, but I think that's going to be something else, because there really hasn't been. I mean, we talk about the era from in 2018. When you talk about players that came back, Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, Josie Altidore, a lot of those guys came back and I think had careers that would be considered, Hall of Fame worthy. So,
two last points on this. Knaus is 25th in MLS in tenure. Jeez. There are only 97 players that have 4 years of tenure on a team in the entire league. If you put all of the hundreds of players, probably whatever the active roster is times the number of teams, only 97 players have been with a club for more than 4 years. That seems crazy to me. That seems extremely transient. I'd be curious to see some data visualization, like how that's changed over time. Brendan Cartwright, if you're looking for a new project, this is not a DC United one; it's a league wide one. But I'm very curious. Anyway, there were some questions. I think we kind of probably addressed them, but I asked them, and I also asked for people to send us sort of their messages to Steve as he was out the door. This is a question from Richard Rolson. Says DC United will have 2, possibly 3 new players coming in during the summer transfer window. Some of them are already in.
I would say it's 3. Let's see if it's 4 now at this point. It seems like it.
Do you think these 3 players will help turn the season around? Do you think we will see any players leave? And factoring in the positions that are being filled, what positions would you still want to be filled this window? Do we think these 3 players will help turn the season around? I think it changes the nature of what the depth in the bench is, and it allows it improves at least 2 positions because Badji is not intended to start, so that is a depth position. But at left back and defensive midfield, you're now getting an improvement without a doubt. And typically those 2 positions, 2 out of 11, that might change some results here. I think potentially.
I won't. I think the win on Saturday, I think, was important in that, and we'll see what happens against Minnesota. I mean, if they manage to pick up another win, this makes the end of the end stretch a lot more interesting, where if they can put together a decent Leagues Cup run, they can build together some confidence. I mean, this is still a team, I think, talent wise, they're not elite level MLS, but are they good enough for that 8 or 9 spot in the playoffs? I think so.
It seems like most of the Eastern Conference is.
Yeah, and that's the nature of the MLS playoffs. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I mean, they could easily turn on a run. A lot of other teams could fall off. There already are teams that are falling apart. Philly started hot and they've won 1 of 17. So, it really is just a matter of if they can flip it back around, they're going to have depth coming in. I mean, I will say it's still probably a long shot. I would tend to say they probably won't make the playoffs, but we'll see how the Leagues Cup looks, and we'll see how this final stretch goes. If they put it together and they go out and they win, 3-4 games, and they put themselves in position heading into that final week, they might sneak into that playoff spot. So it certainly could happen.
He asked if any players might depart. I still think Tyler Miller might leave, but other than that, I'm not seeing anybody else on the roster who could.
Yeah, I don't. No one's going to have any value, and I think this team is kind of, I feel like, made it very clear that they are just kind of holding firm. They're not making any, we're not seeing the trades they made were very strategic type trades. They were trades for guys that, for Chris Durkin that had value as sort of that U22 slot to a team that thought they would be contending. And they got two very good players out of it. I mean, so.
And if they add another player, what do you think the need is still? I still think it would be, in a perfect world, it's a 10 or a left-sided creative player. I think that with the amount of money they have, that probably is not the way they're going to go if they're going to add another player.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if do you look to, if the center back is out there? They talked about, I think when you've talked about it was forward, midfielder, and center back. So we have the forward in Mbaji, we have the midfielder in Eno, and that also leads me to believe maybe there was some known fact that like this was it for Steve. Maybe there was an attempt to come back, and then I think at this point maybe it was known. So I think they could look to maybe try to fill that center back role. They will not have an international slot. Eno will take up the open international slot. So that lends an interesting question as to what they try to do, who they try to trade.
If they somehow decide to keep either put Click in the double pivot or in the two sixes, then you've got a 4-man rotation in the center back of Peltola, Tubbs, McVeigh, and Bartlett, which is fine. I don't think that's horrible. I think you could certainly upgrade it, but I also think it's not the worst. Then there was one more other question. Oh, well, Stefan Clow. I can't see it. I'm sorry. Steven, excited about the show. Will you talk about how much roster space this frees up and what it may mean for the upcoming transfer window? So was he on 880? Can you look up the number that he was on for a full year?
Yeah,
I know it was above in 750. I know it was a TAM figure. It remains, we can definitely see sort of based on any other moves that occur, we can see if it was already accounted for and spent or if it's available to be spent now.
Yeah, I'll have to go to the Players Association, but I think it was 800 and something thousand.
On a healthy chunk, for sure.
Yeah, 815,000 was his base, and his guaranteed was the same. So it's 815. So half of that $4 million, 400,000, 500, whatever. But we're not 400,000. We're just going to say it even 400,000. Again, I think that is potential cap space that is freed up. I also don't know I don't know if they get the TAM back or if the TAM. I don't know how any of that works. It's one of the nebulous things about MLS and how it works. So
I wanted to read some of these messages from fans. The aforementioned Brendan Cartwright says, "I remember congratulating him when he'd been drafted and how excited he was. I met him again preseason at the Wharf, and he signed my Ulysses S. Grant biography, and we swapped stories about impending fatherhood. A total credit to the club and DC." At the DK in DC says, "I was at the 2014 MLS draft in Philly." I guess I was with this person, with other DC United fans like me. When he was selected, his mom came into the crowd and hugged us all. It was a really cool moment. Steve and family are forever black and red. M. Stan at DC 7223 says, "Thanks for everything, Captain. Our 3-generation family became season ticket holders in 2013, so I've been there with you the entire time. Absolute class. We're all gutted to see you go. Nothing but the best to you and your family, and hope the club does you right and keeps you in the family." Richard Rolson says, "Steve was 100% black and red through and through. Hopefully he continues to play a role with United. He could really help build the culture of the club. I really appreciated him over the last decade. He always gave it his all. I never questioned his heart or effort. Just wish injuries weren't cutting his playing career short. Hope he remains an active part of the club. I could see him being a great coach." So hopefully, I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity for that also this weekend. Hopefully he gets more of his flowers after he plays 45 minutes and gets applauded off against Celtic.
MLS Next Pro coach, maybe the next pro team, possibly. I have to check. I'm not sure. A lot of the coaches share it. I wonder where he is, if he's been working towards his coaching license. I know that's been something that a lot of players have done sort of towards the end of their career, is trying to work towards that. So
some of the people who were talking about him said that he didn't seem like a guy who would want to do coaching. But I think also when you're newly retired at 33, that tends to reorganize what you thought you're going to be doing in your 30s.
Yeah, interesting to see. I don't know. Maybe he lives a quiet life in Northern Virginia. So I think that's going to do it I don't think we have anything else we want to get into this show. It's been a long show, probably longer than we anticipated, but
always
it is what it is. Always the case. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. We will be back on Monday to kind of sum up the rest of the season, look ahead to Leagues Cup. We'll also be talking about Leagues Cup. This will be the first time we're covering Leagues Cup because we didn't last year. Go read the Athletic article if you want to find out why. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.
Vamos.